Brett, welcome to Mint Season 5. What a big deal.
Thanks, man. Season 5 is my favorite, so I'm glad I could be here.
Let's go. I'm stoked to have you a part of the season. Big topic, or the three major topics for Season 5 were CCO, music, and Web3. And the last one was social media, essentially Web3 social. I feel like you guys have a pretty good creator house going on at Launch House, so there's a lot of coverage to do within those three themes. But before we get started, who the hell are you, Brett? What does the world need to know about you? We can start there and then work our way forward.
I really don't know what the world needs to know about me, or if the world even needs to know about me. But I'm Brett. I'm co-founder of Launch House, which is a community for ambitious builders, founders, engineers, investors, anybody thinking about the future and actually building stuff to make the future happen sooner. So I guess what to know about me, spent my career in startups, once had a stint advising the CEO of Google on what apps the kids are using these days. When I was part of the M&A team, that's a way to describe it. And really into music on the side. I've produced a bunch of songs and stuff. I haven't minted them as NFTs.
Are you even a musician if you haven't minted your songs as NFTs? Is that even
If I had the time, honestly, I would. And ironically, before the whole NFT stuff blew up, I was like, man, I would become a musician if I could make some money doing it. And now
look at this.
Money.
You see the drum set behind me? I was the same. I had the same mentality. So
really?
Both of us are in the same boat. But wait, what kind of music do you play?
I produce. I'm like a full stack producer. So I produce, I sing, songwrite, everything.
Wow.
So yeah, catch me on Spotify, Monte Del Monte.
Oh shit, I didn't even know that. So at what point did you take a turn from producing and to focus more on startup-y related stuff?
It's kind of all happened at the same time. So truthfully, like in high school, I was really into music, like everybody was, in a rock band. Probably you were the same.
Yes, sir.
And obviously growing up with an ambitious mindset and a family that pressured me to succeed, I realized that music was not going to be the thing that I succeeded in. Even though I felt like I was I loved it. I felt like I was decently talented in it. I just wanted to go into tech or something else. I actually started going down the academia track. I was exploring kind of doing computational cognitive science. And then I was doing music in college, and then I graduated, got a job in consulting like everybody does, and then wound up at Google. And when I was at Google, obviously, as many FANG employees do, you got a lot of free time and and you're pretty bored. And so I spent all of my free time basically sitting on Twitter, chit-chatting with the Ben Horowitz of the world back when they were active on Twitter, reading tons of tech essays and writing, even my own strategy essays and stuff. And then producing a ton of music. So it was always kind of like a serious side project.
How has music affected your success in tech? You ever think about that?
I would say a lot, to be honest. Okay. I mean, music is, I think one of the things in any industry that you're in, you kind of need to stand out. Naval has some quote that's like, nobody can compete with yourself. Sam Altman said something else similar, which is like, the more radically yourself you are, the less people can compete with you. And so music was always something that I strongly identified with. And like I have always felt like, or I've always felt like I was the best of like all of the non-musicians, all the people who didn't take music as a serious career. I was like technically the better because I had all this time at Google to get good. But there's some takeaways. So like one really interesting thing is, this is a really amazing startup insight from songwriting and production. So there's a rule in production, music production. If you listen to any song, it's really important not to introduce multiple new elements at the same time. So in the verse, you usually have the drums, you have the bass going, and the vocals. And then if you want to add some more stuff to go to the next section, you usually don't add more than just like one thing, because the brain can't process things.
Right.
and actually good production. If you listen to like a lot of Kanye stuff, like whatever, the songs are simple. There isn't a lot going on in them. They're really straightforward. It's usually like 5 or 6 elements together. Great startups are the same. You can't do too much. You can't throw a bunch of stuff at people. Leo Polovitz had this really amazing tweet the other day where he was saying that startups with too many SKUs, too many different products, wind up not getting funded as well as startups with fewer SKUs, even if they have the same or even larger recurring revenue. And so it all goes to show that like people are dumb and you need to simplify things in order to succeed. And so that's what I found. Like whenever I started writing simpler songs, people liked them more. Whenever I find simpler ways to explain what my company does, people are more excited about it. So everything rhymes. There's like, you can learn something from everything.
I even noticed that in the introduction of who you are, kind of introducing what Launch House is and what you do. You kind of broke it down really, really simply, but in the grand scheme of things, it's much more than that as a whole. But if as a primer, that's like it sits at the top and there's branches to what Launch House is. So actually, what is Launch House? What are the different branches?
Yeah, so I would say there are 3 branches. We haven't announced one of these branches yet, but
Ooh, okay, all right.
I'll basically say this, and then I'll get into the other 2 branches. The statement I want to make is that we think the future of venture capital is at the intersection of capital, content, and community. So I'll talk about the content and community piece. Okay. A lot of tech companies out there, like they have a content guy, they've got a Twitter person, they've got like, like a corporate blog, they, maybe they have a newsletter, maybe they pay some influencers on Twitter to like post their stuff, but none of them look at themselves as a media company. And so that's something we really care about because we think that like media is way more powerful and interesting than a content guy, which is why we're like, very lucky to be working with Toby Howell, who got his start kind of writing for the Morning Brew, growing their Twitter account to 300,000 followers. He's now the brains behind our operation, which has started with Home Screen, which is a 3 times a week newsletter that is basically like Morning Brew for tech and crypto. It's just as great as you can imagine it. It's really funny. It's topical, very interesting. I'm
a subscriber. Yeah. So it is cool.
Yeah. And then we also have other events newsletters in different cities. So IRL, LA, and New York. These are just ways to kind of engage people and stuff. So that's in longer term, we have ambitions to kind of make this into a more proper, kind of more fully encompassing media operation that goes into video and all this other stuff. But we're really excited about it. We're really excited about taking a media focused approach to media. We're in LA, Beverly Hills, Hollywood for a reason. We're going to capitalize on that exposure as much as we can. The community side is kind of the main thing that we focused on, house community, if you want to call it that. Basically, the way to describe it is that there are kind of like 2 tiers of membership. You can think of it like a membership club. The main tier, the club membership, is what kind of everybody kind of knows and loves. You pay to get access to these amazing co-living experiences in major cities like LA, Beverly Hills, and New York City. Gramercy Park is, the best of the best.
Right.
You get to live for a month with other amazing builders. You have crazy people like the former CMO of Airbnb stopping by, or the co-founder of Coinbase, or like, top investors or other builders just like showing up at your house for dinner or lunch or brunch and just to hang out and chat. And obviously it's like the experience is something like an elite dorm. If you went to a really amazing school, you probably remember looking around and being like, oh my God, these are the smartest people I've ever been around. And guess what? After you graduate, you'll never be around them again. We thought that was sad. So we created this residency experience.
But how do you curate elitistness, if that's even a word? How do you curate an environment like that?
I mean, I guess like how do we make sure that the people coming in are great, or how do we create an environment that is great? I think so.
Well, the only way you're going to get great people is if you have a great environment, right? So they're very much dependent on one another. And once you have great people, that kind of creates the great environment. But it's like a chicken and egg problem, right? So either, Brett, you're great and you've attracted the right people and your co-founder is great, which is probably a part of it. But is there more to it?
I would say that's a big part of it. Like, to be honest, like the first few launch houses, it was our networks that we kind of brought in. It was not like it was a mathematical, like, you know, they have to score XYZ on this aptitude test, or like they have to have had this pedigree in their life. None of that. It was like, who the hell is going to like be dumb enough to like come to Tulum in the middle of the pandemic to like live with us in this house? Like, that was the criteria. And what happened was somehow it selected for amazing people. Somehow that group of people went on to raise from A16Z, Sequoia, Village Global, like a lot of amazing funds funded the companies that came out of those first few houses. And also people became really good friends. And the magic of these group living houses is that they create lifelong bonds better than anything else. Because the secret to like creating deep relationships is unstructured time. Giving people your time and attention. Time is the most sacred, scarce resource in the world. More scarce than money, more scarce than Bitcoin. It's the most scarce resource. And if you are giving somebody your time, then it is the ultimate act of friendship. And so that's why, you know, we can look at every single person coming into each of these programs and say, you're going to make a lifelong friend out of this. And you're going to come to a conclusion or a learning or hit some milestone with your career or product or company that is going to fundamentally change its trajectory. And it's deterministic at this point, which is really cool. So that's how I'd answer it. It's like, it's a predictably amazing experience, both in terms of like helping people connect and, you know, fill the soft stuff, and as well as the hard stuff.
So let's talk about unstructured time. That's such an interesting point, because I feel like I spend so much time online, and majority of my communities are online. And I feel like I never have unstructured time. I feel like my attention is always being drawn somewhere. How do you cultivate and curate unstructured time? Like, what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like unstructured time can be anything from like, I'm sitting and listening to you directly right now for hours and hours and hours and hours. Or it could also just mean we exist in each other's vicinity. Wait, we're just like coexisting together around each other. They did these studies on dorms where they found that people made their best friends based on how close they were to the other person. So they're more likely to be the roommate's more likely to be their best friend or the person next to them in the hallway than somebody 2 floors down who had much more common interests. Right. So it really is like physical proximity, which drives this kind of like these sort of deep connections. But what's also important is that physical proximity can also unlock these kind of like water cooler conversations where somebody's like, oh my God, like, have you ever, you know, do you guys use Mongo or something else? And they'll be like, don't use that. It sucks. And then you're like, oh man, that's helpful. You know, that's a
Save me a lot of time.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So counterpoint then, Brett, because I spent a lot of time, for example, playing RuneScape growing up. I feel like I've made best friends with people that I've never met in my life. Candid, I don't know who they are right now, but at the time, okay, I knew them for who they were online. And you could argue if that's a form of unstructured time, but it's not necessarily like my roommate per se. It's not a physical experience.
Well, it is. Probably you spent hours a day on RuneScape, probably, right?
I did.
You spent hours a day.
Of that.
Yeah. You spent hours a day on RuneScape, and those were the adventures, you know, back then for you probably, right? Like I don't know how RuneScape works, but if you like fight a boss or something like that, it was a passion. It's like, it was something.
Trying to get a fire cape. That's what you try to do.
No, I mean, this is like, it's funny coming from somebody who's building like an IRL community. Funny for me to say, I totally believe in digital first friendships and like connections. It really has to do with unstructured time. We actually teach, everybody to come through our community how to use Twitter, because it's pretty monumental for career growth. And it's all predicated on the same idea of unstructured time. When a venture capitalist is thinking about investing in somebody, it's all about trust. Trust is all about familiarity. Familiarity is all about repetitive exposure. Repetitive exposure is literally just a matter of showing up in somebody's comments once a week.
Facts. Mic drop. I think we can end the podcast right there. So community, content, and capital was the third one, right? Did I get that right? So capital. What is capital?
There's some money. We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. All right. Launch house fund. That's what I'm getting at. What's up, guys? Adam Levy here. Sorry for the quick pause, but I wanted to recognize a couple of our NFT sponsors who are helping make this episode a reality. They are Coinvise and Mint Songs. First up, on Coinvise, you can create a personal or community-owned social token on Ethereum. Coinvise also helps you create incentives through token rewards and bounties, NFT business models, and bot integrations for Discord. Discover more by visiting coinvise.co today. Next up, we've got Mint Songs, a community-curated marketplace for one-of-one music NFTs minted on Ethereum. Mint Songs connects music lovers and collectors with artists that want to build unique one-to-one relationships with their fans through music. To join as an artist, you will need to be invited by an existing artist or an existing collector within the Mint Songs community. Check out the artists pioneering the future of Web3 music today by visiting mintsongs.com. All right, back to the episode. Let's pivot the conversation for a sec, okay? Let's talk about organized religion and identity, okay? It's something that you happen to be very public about, which I really respect. Goldstein, I take it as if you're Jewish. Okay,
yep,
cool.
Absolutely.
There it is.
Love
there
you.
It is.
Member of the tribe.
Let's go. So you're pretty open about religion and your family's stance on it. And I'm not super religious myself. I grew up somewhat religious, and I'd argue organized religion is great at establishing tradition, and it's something that other forms or styles of community lack. How do you actually create tradition? Because I'm Jewish, I don't go to temple, but I celebrate Hanukkah, I do Shabbat dinner, I do these things as a form of tradition, as a form of feeling together, right? As a form of feeling belong to something. How do you cultivate that in a non-type of like religious environment, either digitally or physically?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the backdrop is that, like, I think a lot of folks, my parents were atheists, like full on hardcore atheists. Obviously, we were Jewish, so that means we still did all the rituals and stuff. But it was like my dad standing up in the synagogue saying, "All this is BS," like literally verbalizing it. The rabbi being like, "What the heck is this guy saying?" But the backdrop is that all these atheists kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater when they declared religion being something that is like not valuable. And we're starting to realize that now because we've had multiple generations of like lack of religion, and we've also seen increasing isolation. Like the average male has fewer close friendships today than they did than our grandparents' generation. And my theory is that it all has to do with the sense of belonging, that sense of belonging is declining because of these factors, especially with remote work now. Nobody is getting their community from the office. And what's happening is people's sense of, like I said, people's sense of community, sense of belonging is declining, which is causing all of this societal pathology, so to speak, right? The rise of political polarization, like extremism, like a lot of this stuff. And so when I think about like the solution to making people feel belonging, it's community. And if you think about the most powerful communities in the world, the ones that have stood the test of time, and more importantly, the ones that have evolved to be more optimized than other communities to stand the test of time, if you believe in more natural selection and stuff, it's religions. And so religions all have certain characteristics, it's ritual, it's shared identity, it's shared stories, fables, heroes, all this stuff. And so every great community, even if they don't believe that they're a religion, or if they say they're a religion as a joke, like crypto, Bitcoin, they are. They do have factors that make them as such, right? Like Satoshi Nakamoto is like this, is the hero, right? Vitalik Buterin is the hero in that story, in that community. And there's a mission, and there's something we're seeking, which is we're trying to decentralize, and we're trying to bring power back to people and stuff like that. So I think it's just, you can go line by line, as in what makes something a religion, and you can find parallels across everything from CrossFit to Bitcoin to Launch House to all that stuff. And so I wouldn't say that like we're consciously taking lines out of the Bible and saying how can we copy this. I'm definitely not doing that. It's very natural. Like we're saying, hey, like let's just standardize how these co-living residencies work. Oh, like wouldn't it be cool if everybody did the same thing? It'd make people feel more connected, more bonded, because the 500 people in our community have all experienced this one thing. No matter how benign or stupid it is, even if it's like, hey, Launch House has they're still getting their email stuff together. So like nobody, things, oh, you experienced that too. Like they've dropped the ball in this email or something. Could be anything. Just like this shared experience is something that drives pretty deep connection. You don't have to call it religion.
Something to bond over. Yeah. Something to bond over, whatever it may be. So what are the biggest challenges with cultivating an environment like that? Because it's a form of human engineering, right? Like it feels like you're not actually puppeteering a situation, but there's an element to it to an extent. Like you're consistently testing, you're trying to see what brings people together. I feel like you're consistently measuring the activities that you put together as well, and how connected people have kind of felt either coming into it, afterwards. You know what I mean? Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would say people have a hard time leaving at the end. I would say, so I guess I'll draw a distinction between the in-person residency program, which is what we've been known for a while, and then the broader community. Just like cultivating a membership community in general. Could talk all day about like how hard it is to cultivate a membership community, working, having members internationally and making them feel just as engaged as people in different cities, figuring out how to, stay focused, because communities are basically groups of people. And so you can basically do everything under the sun for your group of people to make them feel happy. So there's definitely a lot of challenges there. In terms of the group living program, I think, there are a lot of software founders probably listening, or software people probably listening. So this is nothing like software. It's like the toilet stopped working, right? It's not even a bug you can account for. Just like stuff will go wrong that makes no sense, and it's just like you just have to be ready for that type of stuff. And so, that's why we brought in kind of team members who have experience in this type of industry that like is totally something outside of the software world.
I feel like it's like a more elitist kibbutz. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's a bougie kibbutz.
It's a bougie kibbutz. That's exactly what it is. Wait, that's totally. So funny. All right, new topic. Okay, let's talk about more like NFTs, social tokens, etc. Okay, so why do you think tokens have prevailed as a killer medium for building communities and sort of representing identities online, whether it be social tokens themselves, NFTs, etc.?
Yeah, I will reverse this and say that I believe that a lot of NFT communities have emerged to drive the value of the NFTs. Communities haven't adopted NFTs because they need NFTs. So the way to think of NFTs is just like fine art. A lot of fine art is just like you can look at a painting and say, how the hell is that $10 million. Like I could have made that. And what is the value driven by? All the other bells and whistles. Oh, the story of the artist, like all this other stuff. You know, it's like this, and like you're getting whatever. That's how this NFT stuff has worked, right? It's a photo of a bear or a monkey or a penguin or something. And how are you going to drive that value up? Community is the easiest thing. Access is the easiest thing. Oh, you get access to exclusive events. Great, cool. Now I want in. Community exclusivity is like is a FOMO driver, right? Scarcity, digital scarcity that's what makes NFTs great. You know, it's a match made in heaven. So do all communities need NFTs? Today, not really.
No. In the future?
I'm really bullish on the promise of crypto, the promise of NFTs and social tokens and all that stuff. We're in a transitionary period where, you know, as every transitionary period goes, the new technology sucks and the use cases aren't incredibly apparent and the needs are not burning. And it will take a lot of early adopters and a lot of just a lot of proof points before kind of this becomes the gold standard for every community. Because look, we can run, you know, the moment YPO decides to get an NFT membership card is the moment that crypto has made it, but it won't. They won't for a while.
That's
YPO has a website. YPO may even have a mobile app. Those two technologies were so important for that community that they decided to go online in mobile. So I'll be interested to see when they adopt crypto.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface of what NFTs can and will do. Many people see them as a form of digital art. It's just a JPEG, but I see it as a tool. It's a tool to do something. It's a tool to achieve something. It's a tool to bring people together, grow a community, create value, etc. Are there any use cases for NFTs that you've come across being in a house with so many bright minds that have either shocked you or something similar?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say one company that actually emerged in Launch House. They were originally working on a lip balm company, and then pivoted into crypto membership infrastructure, which is very cool, and they're doing very well.
That's so different.
Yeah, yeah. They're it's a very badass founding duo or trio. But yeah, basically, like I think the pitch is that the future of most businesses is community, because as competition increases, which it will for basically every category, because the world's getting bigger, people are getting smarter, it's getting easier to build companies. Competition will increase, and then when competition increases, you need to find better ways to do marketing and to increase kind of like your connection with your customers. And community is one of the best tools to do that. Community is like, you know, again, go back to religion. Like Christianity could sell whatever they want to their community because they're with them for life.
Right.
And so your job as Starbucks is to find ways to deeply engage your customers, which is why they have loyalty points and programs like that. And so what I think crypto can unlock is kind of the, you know, composability and all that stuff for loyalty programs and membership programs, and to make those more accessible and available to like a broader range of businesses and communities and stuff. And that's what they're working on. I'm super excited about it.
So a lot of what NFTs have actually done are create these digital cities, these DAOs. And there's a ton of them. I'm sure you're a part of some. I'm a part of a bunch. And this concept of building a digital city is really hot. I'm curious to hear your point of view. Like, what's the difference between building a physical clubhouse, for example, like Launch House, right, to building a digital city? And even more so, what type of infrastructure is required for digital cities to thrive, do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. Again, I would describe the phenomenon of NFTs, like, you know, JPEGs on the blockchain turning into communities, membership clubs, to the same pattern of social tokens turning into cities, right? It's in part, it's to increase the value of the asset, right? Of course, you know, I'm going to buy this digital asset so that it, because it's part of, I get to be part of this cool city and stuff. It makes me feel like it's worth a lot more than it is. But I will say that the truth to it is, I think what we're seeing is the fundamental building blocks of government kind of emerging. I think that's what's the most magical thing about these digital cities or DAOs and stuff like that, is that we are seeing voting infrastructure. We're seeing like governance. We're seeing all the policies. Like we're seeing a lot of the stuff that governments do. And, you know, Balaji was our first investor, actually, the very first check in a launch house. And his thesis was, if we're investing in us, was the network state, which is actually his book just came out this week, which is this idea that the next, you know, he basically said to us that like, we are going to be creating new countries at the same rate that we're creating new currencies today. We're going to be creating new countries in the future at a crazy speed, right? And that these countries will be digital first, and that they'll have these kind of like consulates, like launch houses in different cities around the world, because people still want to hang out in person. So I think I guess my TLDR is that like, I do believe that like there's a legitimate, you know, future. And I do believe in Balaji's thesis that like there will be a UN recognized digital nation within our lifetimes, probably in the next 20 years. But I do think some of them are not really like there for the right reasons.
How do we get to a point where we get recognized by the UN? What's needed?
I don't know, raise an army. I don't know what the UN recognition process is.
There it is.
I think you probably need to own land or something like that. I know Praxis and some other DAOs and stuff are working on this. But I think it's just like I think what people underestimate about starting a new country is that America's pretty good already. America's is the stuff that's been happening at the governmental level with the Roe v. Wade stuff, terrible, pretty disgusting. But on average, people will not leave America. People will not leave this country if they wanted to. Or actually, sorry, the way to frame it is people don't want to leave this country enough to try to go start a new country, which is why it has to happen digitally.
I think that's a great point to nearly end off on. Before I let you go, I have a fun question for you. Favorite cohort of Launch House? Which one?
Probably my first cohort, or the first LA cohort, I would say.
Okay.
I personally participated in like 6 months of cohorts. I was living in a house with everybody else. And I think when we moved to LA for the first time in January 2021 and kicked off that first cohort there, something felt very different, felt very special. It felt very like, wow, this is going to be something really big. We felt that during the first two cohorts, but things were so chaotic, like shuffling water, you know, during hurricanes in Tulum. We couldn't really see through what the future could look like. But as soon as we got to LA, things were stabilized. We saw the magic, and I'll never forget that moment.
There it is. Brett, before I let you go, where can we find you? When are we expecting that third pillar update from Launch House? Shill it away.
You can find me on Twitter, thatguybg. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, home screen, launchhouse.com. And there will be announcements very soon, probably before this airs, I would say.
Oh, sheesh. All right. Nice. All right, man. Well, thanks for your time. We'll have to do this again soon.